Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Wall, joined as always by Nolan Kangas. Nolan, how you doing today, man?
Not too bad, buddy. Yourself?
Doing good, doing good. And we're halfway through our draft ratings here. It's been fun so far. But now we're talking about the AFC and NFC West divisions, home of the two respective conference champions, the 49ers, and the Super Bowl winning champs, Kansas City Chiefs. And a whole bunch of news coming with these teams, and a lot of new homes as well for a ton of them, and a bunch of changes with these drafts. A lot of these teams have been on the lower end of the spectrum in the NFL for a very long time, so this is really huge for them. But we'll start with the team that drafted number 2 about 2 years ago, now all the way up to the second place team in the NFL this past year, the San Francisco 49ers, who were so dominant last season, Nolan. They have lost a few pieces though, but they attacked a lot of those right away in this draft.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this video, but please make sure to like and share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to Lingo Sports. Now, back to the video.
Absolutely, Jeff. And it's crazy to think this team drafted, Nick Bosa, like you mentioned, a couple seasons ago, and now they're one of the premier franchises and a dominant one at that. They didn't have a lot of picks in this draft, but they made them count. First round, everyone thought they were going to take a receiver. No, they filled that hole that DeForest Buckner left, get Javon Kinlaw. I think he was my 5th graded player coming into this draft, so he's going to fill that hole. And then later in the first round, they get Brandon Ayuk, a yards after catch receiver. And Jeff, I don't know if you saw the report. That was Kyle Shanahan's #1 receiver in this draft. That's crazy to think with all the talent. It was, Ayuk, who he ends up getting, and CeeDee Lamb #2 for him. So he's an offensive-minded genius. He clearly knows a little bit more than we do about the game. So clearly, I think there's going to be big things coming for Ayuk in that offense. And then, obviously, the big trade happens. They get Trent Williams. Joe Staley's out the door. He retires. A legend for the 49ers. And, it's not going to be a rookie coming in and taking his hole. It's going to be, a premier tackle in the NFL. The rich get richer, man. This is a stacked San Francisco 49ers team. Grade-wise, I gave them an A. I think they filled some of their holes. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. You get another wide receiver. I would have liked to see them maybe get another corner, because in that game, I think it was Witherspoon got beat up pretty bad by Stephon Diggs. In that divisional round against the Vikings. They took Witherspoon out, and then obviously it's the front seven that starts destroying the Vikings offensive line and Kirk Cousins. But I'm still fine with this draft. I think it's pretty solid. They get the tight end out of Georgia, who's more of a blocking type of tight end. You can go 2 tight end sets with Kittle and him. They're loaded, man. I'd be shocked if they weren't playing in the NFC Championship next year.
Yeah, I think they're definitely headed that way. The last two NFC champions were both out of the NFC West. The 49ers this past year and the Rams before that. And obviously the Seahawks are always contenders. And looking at their needs, they needed wide receiver. Got that. Offensive line. Add that too, especially with Trent Williams, like you said. I think he can still, he's still a pretty athletic left tackle out there, covering the blind side for Jimmy Garoppolo. And defensive line, obviously, Javon Kinlaw. He has some big shoes to fill for sure. We'll see if he can do that in his first couple of seasons. I think DeForest Buckner is probably one of the more underrated players in the NFL, just because you don't always see the sack production, but he does a lot for that defense. And then Brandon Ayuk, like you said, Kyle Shanahan knows a lot more than us, and I think he's going to know how to make the most out of Ayuk's skill set. I just think as a receiver, his skill set is a little bit limited to that run after catch, which he seems phenomenal at. I just, can he add that other dimension I think the 49ers need, and maybe, just generally a great rounder. Obviously, Deebo Samuel is, but I think another one would have helped. Overall, I have to give him a B+, because I think, like you said, they addressed a lot of things. And, with that, you have to take that Trent Williams trade into account with all that. I think that in that sense, they actually did a really good job. The Ayuk thing is the only thing that takes it down a little bit for me, but still, overall, a really, really great draft for the defending NFC champions. Now, as we go down to the guys that almost knocked them off a few times, the Seattle Seahawks, who made some odd moves that didn't seem to have everybody excited, which is not atypical of them. They take Jordan Brooks, the linebacker out of Texas Tech, in the first round. He had a ton of tackles for them. But just, as you go down what they got, Nolan, this might be the worst draft we've covered so far.
Really?
Yeah, I think to be quite honest with you, I think just looking at the depth there, Jordan Brooks isn't a bad player, and it fills a need. That is for sure. But my issue is kind of as you go down, it's like, well, okay, well, actually for Jordan Brooks in this case, I don't think linebacker was their biggest need, but Patrick Queen was right there. So they could have got Patrick Queen and they take Jordan Brooks instead. That's preference. Okay, that's fair enough. But then as you look down, Russell Wilson still needs more protection. You need to build around this guy. He could have an MVP season for sure if he has some more protection, because he has the weapons around him now. You see guys fall like Josh Jones. You see Lloyd Cushenberry, who I've mentioned a few times, Ezra Cleveland, who fell to you guys. And then in the second round, Darryl Taylor, he seems like a Seattle Seahawks defensive end. He's fast, he's got energy, he's all that. He got banged up a little bit, but there were other guys on the board as well. AJ Epinesa, Yetur Gross-Matos. So I just think that they could have done better. I'm going to give them a D. I wasn't impressed.
I don't know if I'm going to be that harsh, Jeff. I think the Jordan Brooks pick was a little interesting on draft night, but he racks up tackles, and I think in that division, when you're going to have the team you're trying to chase is the 49ers, who run the ball more than anybody except for the Baltimore Ravens, right? So I think that's going to be their main focus. Taylor out of Tennessee, watch some of his tape. He's pretty quick and good off the edge. But you're right. I would have liked a little bit more protection surrounding Russell Wilson. Of course, they let DJ Fluker go recently. So Damian Lewis, the guard at LSU, interesting pick there. I think the Kobe Parkinson was in, the tight end out of Stanford was a little interesting as well. But, they got Greg Olsen, Disley's coming off a torn Achilles. So who is going to be the number one and then number two tight end moving forward for them? It was an interesting draft, not my favorite at all. I gave him a B- because I do think that they filled that hole with Taylor. I do like some of the tape I saw from him. Again, we don't know where they're going to spend their money. Are they going to try and re-sign Jadeveon Clowney? Are they maybe going to go Everson Griffin, who's been a productive, edge rusher for the Vikings for a long time as well? We don't really know there. All I know is that their offense is going to be pretty solid when you have Russell Wilson. I like Chris Carson, and the receivers out there with Tyler Lockett, a premier route runner in the league, and DK Metcalf is sure to grow a little bit too. So I think we're going to just be a little bit questionable on the defensive side of where they're going to be spending money and who's going to be stopping the 49ers. Not my favorite class, but yeah, so that's why I give them a B-.
I think kind of what you point to there too, will it help them close the gap on the 49ers? I think the 49ers just got maybe a little bit better, and now it does look tough for them. Now, as we go down a little bit further here, Cliff Kingsbury in the Arizona Cardinals shocked a lot of people when they took Isaiah Simmons off the board. I think a lot of people thought, okay, let's build around Kyler Murray there with maybe a tackle, or CeeDee Lamb, who supposedly he wanted to bring in there. They go with Isaiah Simmons, though. But overall, seemingly a pretty decent draft for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I thought it was decent. Now, it's probably the way I would put it as well. I gave him a B. My only question mark all over the board was who's going to be the other corner moving forward. You have Pat Pete. He's not getting any younger. Or do you have a lot of faith in Byron Murphy Jr. moving forward? And, you mentioned, they're trying to build around Kyler Murray in the offense. They have no offensive line. That is a terrible offensive line. You get Josh Jones in the third. That was nice. Why did he fall to the third? I want to see how he contributes to this offensive line moving forward. Isaiah Simmons helps your defense, but this is a team that really was bad, against the secondary. So where does he help? Is he going to, help stopping the run, which, this team wasn't that bad at? They got two big boys in Fotu, who's 6'5", 320, and Lawrence, who's 6'2", 300. So that helps the interior defensive line. But for me, Simmons, when you look at this defense, I've been seeing that he might play inside linebacker. I'd maybe play him at strong safety. He had some reps there at Clemson, of course, too. But this pass D was so bad that I think if you're going to, take a guy that early in the first round, he's got to contribute, more ways than one on defense. But for me, I do like, a few of their picks. I like the big boys in the fourth round. Evan Weaver out of Cal, not a bad linebacker there as well. I think this is going to be a really good offense if that offensive line and Josh Jones can really hold up. But, yeah, still some question marks. It's still a pretty intriguing but young team.
I will be honest, Nolan. I was underselling it a little bit there. I thought it was a little bit better than decent. I gave them an A, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, look, I understand this is sort of how the draft fell to them, right? I think initially, the Isaiah Simmons pick scared me because I think to myself, like, none of those tackles are going to be available for you, you know? But then, hey, look, Josh Jones somehow ends up in the third round. He may be a steal of the draft. Again, obviously, there's a reason why he fell that far. There must be something there. But either way, I think just going in based on what we've seen, what we went into the draft thinking, Josh Jones seems like a guy that could be a really good blindside protector. So just adding something there. I think the Isaiah Simmons pick is very telling that, like, a lot of teams tend to think of it this way. Like, the best way to get into the playoffs, win your division. Their defense is definitely, I would say still, even with DeAndre Hopkins, the stronger side of the ball with just the overall talent, especially with Isaiah Simmons now. And you think of what he can do. He can help chase down those stretch zone runs of the 49ers. He can maybe cover George Kittle. He's going to be tested a lot this season, but I think that's ultimately what he's been brought in to do. So overall, with the picks that they had, with the position that they were in, I thought that they actually did a pretty good job. It's a roster with so many holes and probably just too many to fill. But yeah, I was pretty optimistic.
Yeah, I don't know. Just to me, it was just really questionable not taking a corner when you're the second worst pass defense in football. You saw Detroit Lions, one of the worst pass defenses in football. They take Jeffrey Okudah third on the board, right? So for me, that was a little, a head scratcher. I think everyone thought they were going to go offensive line, unless, some of the reports were if Derek Brown falls to them, they're going to have to take him just because he's such a game wrecker, in my opinion. So I didn't, obviously I didn't hate the Isaiah Simmons pick. It's going to be how did they use him in this defense to, help that defense improve, which it wasn't very good last year. So that's why I gave him a B, but I still think, they're going to improve. Kyler Murray's going to get older. I think Kenyon Drake is going to be much better than what David Johnson did for them last year. And, of course, you have DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, who I know you love, Christian Kirk, Isabella, Hakeem Butler. Like, they've got a lot of weapons on offense, man. It's going to be a fun team to watch.
Definitely. I'm very interested to see the progression of this team. But now we'll go to the Rams, who had an amazing 2018, as we said. 2019 was definitely rougher. They let go of Todd Gurley. It looks like it's starting to become a completely different team now. But they got a new start, in a fresh new home in SoFi Field coming this season, supposedly. And then, they have a pretty decent draft. They definitely retooled, I think, in the areas that they lost. They get rid of Cook, so they bring in another receiver, Van Jefferson, who is definitely different. A lot of people have compared him to Cooper Kupp. I think he's a great, savvy route runner out of Florida. Cam Akers is interesting. I don't know. He wasn't my favorite running back. I just think, he's not like the biggest guy, but he has a very physical style. And I wonder if that's going to be able to translate to the NFL, where guys are going to be so much bigger and faster. We'll see. We'll see what happens. He looks like he has good instincts. I thought that was an interesting one. And then you got Bryson Hopkins, who I thought was one of the more dynamic tight ends in the class, of not a very good one, but a very dynamic guy. He can make a lot of great catches, and he's very, very fast. But to take him in the fourth, I thought that was a little bit rich for me. I think that was a little high. That was kind of where we started to see the tight ends going. So fair enough. But this offense isn't really a big tight end offense. I thought maybe another offensive lineman would have helped there. Maybe, I don't know. There are just a few things that were a bit questionable. For me. So yeah, I gave him a B minus.
I was a similar grade. I gave them a C+. Still some question marks. This is a bad offensive line. And, Jared Goff, when he has time, can deliver some really nice balls. But when he's facing pressure, he looks awful in the pocket, especially. So to me, they didn't take an offensive lineman until the 7th round. That's a huge uh-oh. And, the Bryson Hopkins you touched on, he can stretch the field as a tight end, but you already paid Tyler Higbee. So that was a little interesting to me. And you're right. Why didn't you take a tackle or a guard in the 4th then if you don't really need a tight end? Cam Akers is interesting, a little bit bigger than Darrell Henderson Jr. He had a really awful offensive line in front of him at Florida State, but he should probably produce for this Rams team. I think he's going to be the starter by the end of the year. Van Jefferson, a lot of people were high on him, and I didn't really see it too much. To me, not a lot of production at Florida. Again, not great quarterback play. He's a good route runner. Where is he going to be? Is he going to be the 3rd or 4th receiver on this team that you're taking in the 2nd round here? Because, we know Robert Woods does a lot. I love Cooper Kupp's game. That's Jared Goff's best buddy. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I like Terrell Lewis, fills that Littleton need in the middle. So that was probably my favorite pick that they had. Jordan Fuller, safety from a big-time school in Ohio State. So that one was nice as well in the 6th. Just nothing that really popped to me in this draft, and nothing that made me think, all right, yeah, now they can compete with the 49ers. Yeah, all right, now they'll definitely get past the Seahawks. I gave him a C+, man.
Yeah, and with this draft in mind, they weren't the best team last year. I think Sean McVay's a great coach, but now the question is, with the division that is getting even more competitive now, he might have to start playing catch up, especially depending on how good the Cardinals get this coming year. We'll be right back though, and then we're going to be talking about the AFC West with the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this video, but please make sure to like and share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to Lingo Sports. Now, back to the video.
All right, we're back now, guys, with the AFC West. Just got finished with the NFC West. Now we'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, who somehow may have gotten their offense even better with this draft. Nolan, do you think so?
I think they killed it. I think there was a few things they missed to me, but if I can come at all the people who are bashing the Chiefs for taking a running back in the first round, shut up. You're dropping at the 32 spot. What's the one big hole you have on offense? Maybe a running back, and they take one who fits their offense perfectly, right? Like, he'll get some carries. I know that. He's going to get a ton of catches, though. He is a great route runner for a running back. That's what Patrick Mahomes needs. It's not like, they're taking A.J. Dillon, who's just a bulldozer, and they're going to give him 250 touches. That's not going to be the situation here in Kansas City. Andy Reid loved him. I didn't think that was a reach at all. I love that pick. Then you get Willie Gay Jr., great feet for a linebacker, rangy, quick too. So I think he fills a hole there for a really questionable suspect Chiefs defense. Lucas Niang, he's a tackle. He played a lot of the right side at TCU though, and I think Mitchell Schwartz is going to have that down pat for a long time. Where does he fit in? Is he going to slide into guard? That'll be the one question mark for me. Other than that, you don't have a great secondary. You lose Kendall Fuller to the Washington Redskins. Who's going to be the shutdown corner for this team? They took Thakarius Keys from Tulane in the 7th. Doesn't really cut it for me. Terrain Matthew can only do so much, right? So I do think their secondary scares me a little bit. But when you have, once-in-a-generation quarterback, we've seen them come back from what? They were down 24 points against the Houston Texans. They're not out of any game that they play in. So I think they just got even better, man. So, I'll expect them to be in the AFC Championship once again.
Yeah, I would think so too. And I think, similar to what I was saying with the philosophy of a lot of teams, like how do we get into the playoffs? Well, for them, it's going to be how do we get back to another Super Bowl? And to them, that has to be number one, stop Lamar Jackson. He and the Baltimore Ravens are your biggest threat. You have to be able to stop the run. And that's why I think they went linebacker over corner there. That makes the most sense to me. It's going to be, if those two meet up for a clash, that is going to be unbelievable. And it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen come playoff time, because as we know, everything's different. Like you said, I love the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick. I'm definitely a big defender of running backs. I don't necessarily think they always should go in the first round, but I think Edwards-Helaire might have been one of the most underrated ones in this class simply because he's not as athletic as the guys like Jonathan Taylor, but he's probably a better route runner than Swift or him. He can do so many things. He seems like a really smart player generally too. And I think a lot of people, even in LSU, like Joe Burrow himself, was saying Clyde's the best player on this entire team. And that says a lot with so many players drafted in this class from LSU.
That was the only thing for me, Jeff, is the running back. If they took Jonathan Taylor, and dude, I love me some Jonathan Taylor, a huge home run hitter. He doesn't really fit the offense though, and he's going to need his touches, 20, 25 touches to, finally get that breakout and, scramble for 80 yards. Whereas if it was Swift or, if it was Edwards-Helaire, who ends up being, they can catch out of the backfield just as well as anybody else in this class. So I thought it was a really good fit.
Yeah, I thought the fit was absolutely perfect. I think Tom Brady is going to be pretty upset that he didn't fall to them for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which we'll get to in a little bit tomorrow, actually. But we'll talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas finally has their NFL team. I'm a little bit sour about that. I kind of feel like they should still be the Oakland Raiders, but whatever. We'll move on from that. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, they got their project going. but it's very clear after these couple of drafts here that these two have a type. I mean, it's basically just whoever gets into the college football playoffs and anybody who's an SEC type player. And I guess that what it simplifies is, they're safe guys and they're tough. They always talk about the toughness of these guys. Right off the bat, though, they take Henry Ruggs with every receiver on the board. So that is interesting, I guess it's more what they wanted. And then Damon Arnett, the Ohio State cornerback, I liked him watching him as an Ohio State fan. I'll just get into it. I think a lot of people thought it was a bit of a shocker. I did too, because I did personally think he was more of a second rounder. But there was a crazy stat I saw on The Athletic, actually, that he didn't allow a single touchdown last year. And then you watch him versus a big guy like Justin Ross, who's going to be a first-round pick next year, and he absolutely whooped him. He whooped him, and he's like David Arnett is not a big cornerback, but he really knows how to play that bump and run coverage. He has some flaws like anybody, but I thought he's a great cornerback. I did think that maybe Jalen Johnson would have been the better one, but hey, I mean, they're trying to build a culture, I think, more than anything there. Ruggs, look, I'll get into my little bit of analysis with Ruggs. Is that my thing is that a lot of people talk about, look at the speed and everything, and I can see that being a thing, but the problem is a lot of times is that he's more of a run after catch guy. Like, he gets a lot of touchdowns through that, not necessarily through just simply always burning a guy, which is both good and bad. But I think the idea that he's going to be able to stretch the field like a Deshaun Jackson kind of thing coming in right away, I'm not so sure. I think he might be a bit of a product in the route running department. But I think overall a good draft for them overall. Bryan Edwards, another wide receiver for them. He's a big, strong guy from South Carolina. And then Lynn Bowden Jr. is pretty much, I think, the weapon that everybody thinks Taysom Hill is. He's much faster, a better receiver, and better on the run, and probably an even better thrower than Taysom Hill is too. And Taysom's age 30, but I'll let you get into that, Nolan.
Yeah, that was the only pick I had for the Raiders where I gave it, a green check mark. Bowden Jr., last year, 700 yards receiving, and then just this past year, 1,400 yards rushing. He's a weapon, man. Like, they're going to use him all over the field, similar to what Deebo Samuel does for the 49ers. For me, the Henry Ruggs thing, it's tough. In Alabama's stacked offense, he finished third on the team in catches and third on the team in yards. Right? So for me, Ruggs is more team fit. If he went to a team like Denver, where you have a guy like Drew Lock, who has an absolute cannon, there's already the 50-50 guy who can run every route in Cortland Sutton, and you're just a guy on the other side who literally stretches the field and takes the slants inside, that fits better to me than what the Raiders are going to be doing with Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota, whoever the quarterback is. Damon Arnett, you're right. And I'm starting to become a little bit more in favor of this pick. I think there was better corners on the board, but against big competition, he played really well. So it may have been a stretch, but not too bad. The one that was a head scratcher to me, Tanner Muse, Clemson guy. I know they love their Clemson guys. He's a little too stiff to me to be a safety in the NFL and a little too small to be a linebacker. So that was kind of a head scratcher for me. Again, really smart player, a leader for that Clemson defense. So, he's got the brain coming in, that's for sure. But it's going to be whether he can hang with some of these athletes in the AFC West.
Yeah, and I think but having a few good linebackers already there will help his development, especially if they want to bulk him up. We'll see if that is even possible. Now, as for the team splitting SoFi Field with the LA Rams, the LA Chargers just lost their longtime franchise quarterback in Phillip Rivers, and now it looks like they found a new face in Justin Herbert with their first pick in the first round of the NFL draft. Nolan, what were your thoughts on the Chargers?
So I love their class. I love their first two picks. So I think Justin Herbert, I would put all the money in the world right now. He's going to have the best rookie season amongst all the quarterbacks. And I know that's, Jordan Love probably won't play and Tua might not play, but he has so many weapons and he has a pretty solid offensive line in front of him. So I think if he plays, say, 12 games, 13 games, I don't think Tyrod Taylor is going to start the whole year. He'll have a pretty solid rookie year. The thing is, for this team moving forward, Melvin Ingram, Keenan Allen, Pouncey, Hunter Henry, Desmond King, Joey Bosa, their contract is up in 2021. So you have to make this stuff work quick. Who are you going to re-sign for the future, right? Because, man, this is a really talented team and a loaded roster. But let's say, they finish 9-7, 10-6, and, they're on the edge of maybe making, an eventual AFC championship with this roster. They're going to lose some of those guys eventually. I really do like Kenneth Murray. I think he's a really rangy linebacker, and he's athletic. He was the leader of that Oklahoma defense. So I think moving up into the first round was smart. And I think KJ Hill, how in the world did he fall to the 7th round? I think he'll end up being the 4th wide receiver for this team moving forward. But I gave them an A, just because, I love the fit. Derwin James Jr. and Kenneth Murray, how they'll be able to tackle all over the field. Can they keep it all together for a few more years? That's the only question mark. You look at the Miami Dolphins, they are going to be, I'm not going to say a powerhouse, but they are building for the future. They're going to have a lot of cheap guys. They spent a lot of money to keep these guys for a few more years. The Chargers, who are they going to sign and re-sign to make sure this team improves moving forward?
Okay. So, Nolan, you might be surprised. I have it almost completely opposite to you. So I gave them a C-. A lot of that has to do with because I just simply don't believe in Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I said this in the last couple episodes. We don't want anybody to have a bad career. Not at all. This is just what we kind of see. Personally, I think Justin Herbert is going to be the bust of this draft. That's just my opinion. I'm not sure about as you are that they fortify that offensive line enough for a guy that doesn't deal with pressure well as it is. Look, he shows those flashes, and those are there. That means that there might be something there. Is there a guy in that Chargers facility that can coach him up and coach those bad habits out of him and get the best out of Justin Herbert? I'm really not that sure. And then Kenneth Murray, I like him too a lot. There was some talk though and some concern about his ability to kind of he's athletic and everything, but sometimes he runs into he kind of runs into the offensive line, and that's he sometimes lacks a little bit of that vision. Either way, I think he's a good pick, which is why I kind of keep this grade a little bit higher. And I do think KJ Hill was quite a steal at the end of this draft.
Yeah, for me, the Herbert situation, if he went to Jacksonville, that would have been a brutal start. He has no weapons. He has no help. He doesn't have a great coaching staff. I like Anthony Lynn, and I think because he has those weapons in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry, not the best offensive line, but certainly, I'd say in the upper half of the league. Brian Bulaga kind of helps out a little bit too. You're right, it's going to be different coming from Oregon where he had a really, really good offensive line. So we'll see that situation. But, man, I just think he's got a cannon of an arm. He has one of the best route runners in football in Keenan Allen. He has a 50-50 guy who can nearly catch any, ball with touch thrown to him. That's if Justin Herbert will, kind of throw, balls with touch a little bit more. We've seen flashes of excellence and flashes where it's just, what is he doing on the field? I do think he's going to be a solid pro. I don't think he's going to have the star potential of maybe, say, Joe Burrow or the star potential of a Tua Tagovailoa. I think he's going to be capable, and I think the Chargers are going to have the best record of those two other teams, going into next year.
Okay, I like the bold prediction there, Nolan. And when you just look at one of those other two teams, the final team that we have here today, the Denver Broncos. I mean, they maybe in a couple of years, even if the Chargers do keep all those skill positions, they might have the better team. And you just look at the first couple of picks, I think it's pretty clear they want to throw the football a lot, getting Jerry Jeudy, then KJ Hamler, and then a couple tight ends later on, and then a couple of offensive linemen to help protect Drew Lock. I think it's very clear what's happened here. They know who they like. They like Drew Lock. They like his rookie contract a lot too, and they're really starting to build around him a lot. I think maybe what happened with the last Super Bowl is sort of, almost all those guys were free agents, and then they all fell off, and the Denver Broncos have not been very good since, all those guys had to leave, and, they weren't able to sustain that. Now they're kind of building heavily through this draft, and, right away, this could be a very, great, crazy pass-happy offense. Lloyd Cushenberry, another potential steal of the draft here. He made Joe Burrow's life very easy back there for LSU. I thought he was great, and he could play center or guard. That's always good if you can play more position than one, especially on offensive line when you know it's going to be, chopping and changing. And then Alberto to go behind Noah Fant. There are issues with Alberto. I mean, obviously there are some, some fluidity issues. He's not the most agile guy. Don't necessarily have to be in my eyes as a tight end. And then there's obviously some fundamental issues too, but you can work behind Noah Fant. So you just add another guy there. So I think it's very clear that, they're just going to let Vic Fangio worry about the defense in Denver with already some pretty good pass rushers there. I'm not sure how good they'll be, but, I really like what they did there. I gave them an A.
Jeff, I gave them an A-. I wouldn't be overly shocked if this team made the playoffs next season. You have Vic Fangio, who's, a terrific defensive mind. You have Pat Shurmur, who's going to be the OC. We saw what he did with, Case Keenum and the Minnesota Vikings with some weapons on that offense, too. Dude, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler is almost like a mini Tyreek Hill. And if they go 2 tight end sets with Noah Fant and Alberto ran sub 4.5 and Noah Fant ran a 4.5. So, maybe they're not the greatest blocking tight ends in the world, but boy, can they stretch the field and can they move. So I love their offense moving forward. I give them an A- just because their offensive line isn't that great and they didn't take, a guard or a tackle until the 6th round. So that was a question mark for me. This is going to be a great defense. We know that. This offense is going to improve quite a bit if Drew Lock can take another leap. But, man, I think they're set to succeed moving forward. John Elway didn't mess this one up.
No, he didn't. I'm usually very critical of John Elway and both his pro career and his career as a GM for the Broncos. I think they really improved a lot in this one. Now for some questions, Nolan. Who is likely to return who's more likely to return to the playoffs, I should say, the LA Rams or the Seattle Seahawks?
I'm going to go Seahawks just because I trust Russell Wilson more. I think at that point it comes down to quarterback play, and Russell Wilson's a top 3 quarterback in football right now. Jared Goff has been on and off for it seems like his whole entire NFL career. Yes, Aaron Donald is one of the best defenders in football. Yes, Jalen Ramsey is a shutdown corner. Can they do enough on the defensive side of the ball to hold back some of the mistakes that we know Jared Goff is pretty much bound to make? Russell Wilson doesn't make too many mistakes. I'll take the Seahawks.
I would think so too. If either of those two are going to make it, it's got to be the Seahawks. And say what you want about Pete Carroll to Sean McVay. Pete Carroll still has built a pretty good team there. Overall, I think there's a lot more certainty on that team with the Seahawks than there is the Rams. Now for the Cardinals, though, they've got a lot of weapons now. They got DeAndre Hopkins. They got this offensive genius supposedly in Cliff Kingsbury, who may be able to take this team to new heights. Will they do it this year? Will they become a top 10 offense in the NFL?
Top 10 offense in the NFL. I'll say no. I think they'll just miss that. I think they're a top 15, maybe even a top 12 offense. I like Kenyon Drake. I like what he can do out of the backfield, too, catching the ball. Obviously, we love DeAndre Hopkins. Larry Fitz is still one of the best receivers. I'm not going to say one of the best receivers in the NFL today, but he's one of the best NFL receivers of all time. Christian Kirk should take a leap. It's that offensive line. How much can they hold up? And Kyler Murray's going to have to scramble a little bit more than I think he'd like to. I just think there's too many good offenses. Kansas City, Baltimore, San Fran, Tampa Bay is going to be unreal. I think Cleveland takes a leap. Pittsburgh with Big Ben back. Yeah, I even think Buffalo is going to have a pretty solid offense too, with now having a number 1 in Stephon Diggs. I'll say they just missed that top 10.
I'll say they missed the top 10 overall, but I think in passing, I think they're actually going to just squeeze in there. I think they will, just because it's going to be very pass heavy. And I think with a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who's very, very hard to keep out of the end zone, who's very hard to stop. I think he just adds another layer of versatility to their passing game that, another option that they didn't have last year. Now, finally, will John Gruden bench Derek Carr for another quarterback, whether it's Marcus Mariota or otherwise?
That's tough. I'm not high on Derek Carr, and coming out of Oregon, I loved Marcus Mariota. Absolutely loved him, and I know Mike Mayock did too. So the thing is, there just wasn't many flashes for Mariota in Tennessee. right? He had a few great games and then a few games where you were just thinking, what the hell is he doing out there? I'm going to say he will bench Derek Carr, but I think Derek Carr gets his job back later in the year. I just think Marcus Mariota is going to make too many mistakes. Early on, Carr's going to, have a couple bad games, throw for less than 150 yards. Everyone's wondering what the heck's going on. To me, I would run the football with Josh Jacobs and then just use Henry Ruggs however you can. But, yeah, they're taking a quarterback next year. I'd be amazed if they didn't.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr's chances at quarterback. I think that would be interesting. I don't know if that's maybe the smartest idea, and I don't think he will do that. But I wonder if he maybe even is the third QB on the depth chart when it's all said and done come the start of the NFL season. It's definitely going to be a show in Las Vegas. I think that's for sure.
Yeah, no, they will be a fun team. But, hey, wouldn't that be nice? A little triple option with Bowden Jr., Josh Jacobs, and then you can even have Henry Ruggs coming in there as well with some jet sweeps. That would be a really fun offense. But, yeah, I think there's some question marks there for the Raiders. But, yeah, you're right. It's going to be a show with Gruden for sure.
It definitely will be. Well, this is going to wrap up the last half of our shows here. We're going to have one more tomorrow, the NFC and AFC South, to wrap it all up. So don't miss it, guys.